Happy Independence Day. This is a special 4th of July 2025 symposium, and I will have a special guest who will be introduced shortly. I'm Diane Sare, president of the LaRouche Organization, and we are now beginning the 250th year of the American Republic, which will be celebrated the signing of the Declaration of Independence on the 4th of July, 2026. Obviously, there was a lot that went into the founding of our nation. There were already crucial battles going on in the Boston area this year, 1775, of which we've celebrated the 250th anniversary. And I think it is very urgent for Americans now that we rid ourselves of the last vestiges of British imperial philosophy. It was a continuous struggle throughout the Republic. It was evidenced by the fact that we could not abolish slavery in the Declaration of Independence, although there were people like Alexander Hamilton, Ben Franklin, Gouverneur Morris, John Jay, many people who wanted to abolish slavery, but they couldn't get it through. And so we had to wait until the War of the Rebellion, organized and orchestrated by the pro-slavery, pro-cotton and tobacco selling British Empire. But this has been the brawl in our republic. We had later Andrew Jackson, who got rid of the Second National Bank, created the circumstances where we had hundreds, if not thousands, of separate currencies, which was also part of what led to the so-called Civil War, and what's being threatened now by every billionaire entity being able to have its own stable coins, quote unquote stable coins, which are not stable, anything but we discussed that last week. So tonight, what I would like to do is introduce, first of all, my guest, my husband, Christopher Sare. Welcome, Chris.
Thank you. Thank you. It's good to be here.
And what he is going to be talking about is something which is the 200th anniversary of in 2025. And what Chris is going to be talking about is the Erie Canal, which we celebrate the 200th anniversary of this year, and which transformed not merely the state of New York, but the entirety of the United States, the state of New York becoming, as a result of it, the #1 manufacturing state in the Union for 150 years. So, Chris, I'm going to turn it over to you, and please go ahead.
Great, thank you. Yeah, well, so this is the 200th anniversary of the completion of the Erie Canal. It was completed in October of 1825. And so I'd like to go right to the first slide there. Yeah, it's the 200th anniversary, and there is a lovely painting of a canal boat going down the Erie Canal. Next slide. So this is fun. This is how we used to celebrate the 4th of July. We would start a great project. And in fact, over the years, there were many canals and railroads, things like that, that were started on 4th of July's. But here you can see the first shovel being put in the ground in Rome, New York, to start the Erie Canal. But I'm going to go back a little bit to sort of set the stage for the Erie Canal. Because the building of the canal was the basis of a fight. It was a fight against the British Empire. And it goes back to, this is the governor of Virginia, the colonial governor of Virginia, Alexander Spotswood. And he was actually one of the first leaders to take a group of people over the Shenandoah Mountains, over the Blue Ridge Mountains, And as part of as a move to go west, he was the governor of Virginia, and Virginia extended far to the west, but they had to get over the Blue Ridge Mountains and the Appalachian Mountains. And then you'll see here, there's a young George Washington, 1748. So he's 16 years old, surveying the Fairfax survey, which actually gave the Virginia state the right to go beyond the Blue Ridge Mountains. In terms of, this proved that the charter allowed that. So so this was early on, and not long after that, the networks around Ben Franklin, who had set up the American Philosophical Society, who was constantly involved in scientific work. And as he put in the founding documents for the American Philosophical Society, the idea of scientific and infrastructure projects that would increase mankind's power over matter, is how he put it. So he goes to England in 1758, I believe. And you can see right after that, the Francis Duke of Bridgewater started a project called the Bridgewater Canal, and they built this canal from 1759 to 1761. James Brindley there was the engineer that built the canal, and these were the networks inside England that Franklin was working with, in an attempt really to create a Republican movement inside England. This was obviously before the American Revolution, and so one potential option would be to get England to become a republic, but that didn't work out. And this is so they won the British won the French and Indian War, so called. And the Treaty of Paris, you can see here, they defeated the French. Washington was involved in this as well. It's a longer story, but basically you can see that whole area there that's shaded, that became British controlled. So you might think then, okay, the colonies would be free to develop that whole area, basically going out to the Mississippi River, but no. This is the proclamation line of 1763, and Prime Minister Lord Shelburne, basically, he became Prime Minister of the British Empire. This is where the British Empire moves into full empire colonial mindset. And what you can see is along the ridge there of the Appalachian Mountains, they draw this line, the proclamation line of 1763, and they say the colonies cannot go beyond that line. So you can't get new colonies, you can't get new, and we didn't have states then, but and they have this whole area there, which is basically an Indian reservation that they create. So they want to close in the colonies, keep them under control, and basically just, this is, not long after this, Adam Smith writes his Wealth of Nations, and the whole idea is a British imperial system of free trade, of buying cheap, of selling dear. They want the colonies producing cotton, they want the colonies producing raw materials, and they're going to buy them cheap from the colonies, they're going to sell them dear on the world market, and it's a British colonial system. Now, the American Revolution changes that, and this is the surrender of the British Empire in Yorktown in 1781. So this is a very revolutionary moment, and we are celebrating we're going into the 250th year, as Diane said, of the Declaration of Independence, which was our Declaration of Independence from the British Empire system, leading to the Revolution. And this is the surrender in Yorktown of the British Empire to the U.S. Forces. Now, so that's 1781. In 1783, George Washington, this is before the Second Treaty of Paris. The Second Treaty of Paris is what officially ended the hostilities between the American Republic and the British Empire. Not long before that official Treaty of Paris, George Washington is up in Newburgh, New York. You can see his headquarters there in Newburgh. And on the front lawn of his headquarters, there now stands this beautiful monument. And you can see the statue of George Washington in that monument. And he's looking over the Hudson River. Now, what he did in 1783 was he took a tour up the Mohawk Valley to Fort Stanwix, which is now Rome, and that's where the Erie Canal, the first shovel, would be put into the ground in Rome, New York. So he went up there, and this was what was on his mind, even before the official signing of the Treaty of Paris. He's thinking about ways to get west, because the thing that you'll see about the Mohawk River Valley is that this is the one substantial break in the Appalachian chain where you can go up the Hudson River and across the Mohawk River Valley and basically just keep going all the way to Lake Erie. I mean, you'll see it goes up many, it goes up many hundred feet, but it's a gradual incline. So Washington, he's Virginian, right? But he is the general and will become the president of the United States. He's not just concerned about the development of Virginia or, southern states. He's concerned about the development of the entire nation. So this is what he does. Now, a ally of Ben Franklin, who had gone to Europe and was working in Franklin circles in Europe during the Revolution, when the victory is obtained in Yorktown, 1781 to 1784, he takes 3 years and tours England, France, the Netherlands. He tours all of the canals and the great projects that exist in those areas, Belgium as well. So he studies for 3 years. Then he comes back to the United States. In 1785, he goes down. This is before the Constitution has been written, obviously. He goes down, he talks to George Washington. He meets George Washington in Mount Vernon. And he says in his memoirs, for 2 days, all we did was talk about canals. It was canal mania. George Washington in 1785 had become the president of the Potomac Canal Company, and they were beginning to build simple locks on the Potomac Canal. And what Washington was thinking about was, how do we get west? Can we build a canal between Maryland and Virginia that will get us west? So he's working on that. But Elkanah says, I have an idea. I think that the Mohawk River Valley would be a better potential. So Elkanah Watson goes back up to New York, and in 1791, Elkanah Watson takes a tour out to Fort Stanwix, where Washington had been in 1783. And he writes up a whole map and proposal for canals. And there are other people who join in on this project, and they form the Western Inland Lock Navigation Company in 1792. And General Philip Schuyler, a Revolutionary War general, who also like Franklin in the 1760s toured Europe and looked at the canals there. So he already had internal improvements, canals on his mind. Simon DeWitt, who was the surveyor of the American Revolution, he was the first U.S. surveyor, and Governor George Clinton, the governor of New York at the time. They are all very, very honed in on the potential of building this canal and developing the entirety of upstate New York. So they build some locks, etc. But it's very it's very rudimentary, and time passes on. I think the company goes bankrupt. DeWitt Clinton, who becomes a champion of the Erie Canal, he goes down to Washington, D.C. to meet with President Jefferson. And he has an idea of building this canal, not just a small canal along the Mohawk with improvements around the Mohawk. His idea is we're going to build a canal all the way out to Lake Erie. And this is going to be a tremendous project, a great project that's going to transform all of not only upstate New York, but as Diane said, all of the nation. It's going to open up the entire nation, the entire Great Lakes region. So he proposes to Jefferson federal funding for this. Jefferson's response: "It is a splendid project and may be executed a century hence. Here at the Potomac is a canal of a few miles, projected by General Washington, which has languished for many years because of the small sum of $200,000 could not be obtained. And you talk of making a canal 350 miles long through a wilderness? It is little short of madness to think about." So I think you see the problem of the physiocratic mindset that you have with Jefferson, the slave owning, plantation minded. We don't have the money for great projects. We're just going to have our plantations. We're going to have our agricultural society, and we'll get along. We'll be fine. Every man will just get along, and that's the economy that we're going to have. No great projects, no big government. We don't want big government getting involved in building great projects. And I'll point out that this creep, John Randolph of Roanoke, as he's named, he actually made the point that if the federal government could build internal improvements like canals and have a national bank to finance these things, well, the next thing you know, the federal government is going to take your slaves away. So this is the insanity that we're up against, that would just scoff at the idea of building a great project. And frankly, it's similar to the problem that we have today. There's very little vision coming from our federal government to build great projects that would develop our nation. So DeWitt Clinton's back in New York. They form a board of canal commissioners in 1811. Diane mentioned Gouverneur Morris, who had penned the preamble of the Constitution, who had fought valiantly against slavery in the United States. He, not surprisingly, becomes a member of the board of the Canal Commissioners. Stephen Van Rensselaer, who sets up the Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute in Troy, New York, So he's a very, an engineer, interested in engineering, interested in bringing science to the nation. And DeWitt Clinton, they set up the Board of Canal Commissioners in 1811, and they make proposals for the state of New York to fund this canal, since they're not going to get any federal help. And since, for example, in 1811, what's happening at the same time? The first national bank of the United States is allowed to expire. So we don't have a national bank. There's no commitment to building building internal improvements from the federal government. Madison is coming in, and this is what's running the country. So there's a period of time, of course, between 1811 and 1816, called the Second American Revolution, or the War of 1812, where we fight the British again. But coming out of that war, not only do you have the realization that we need a national bank, so the national bank is rechartered right around the same period. It's not yet the Biddle Bank. It becomes Nicholas Biddle's bank not long thereafter, but you do have a fight for a second national bank. And DeWitt Clinton defeats Martin Van Buren in 1816 in the race for governor. So DeWitt Clinton becomes the governor of the state of New York. And one of the first things that he does is goes with this mapping. And you can see here the map. This is from 1817, where the surveyors and engineers, et cetera, I think it might have been Simon DeWitt, they map out the route for the Erie Canal. And with the defeat of Van Buren and his party, they're able to get through the bill for the state of New York to finance this great project. So the Erie Canal is financed entirely by the state of New York. And it serves as a proof of principle for what can be done. So here we are back to the July 4th, 1817. You see the first shovel being dug in Rome, New York. And you can see here, I just have a map of Rome, New York. You can kind of see what's there when he's doing the digging versus what's there. And you can see the canal going through that line sort of towards the bottom of the picture. That's the Erie Canal, and this whole beautiful city is built. And that's the point, is that along this canal, one beautiful town, beautiful city after the next pops up. Small settlements become beautiful cities, industrial centers, hubs where people bring their agriculture in from the entire area. And there's more, you'll see, there's more canals. The Erie Canal is built, but there's more canals that are built all throughout the state of New York, bringing in an amazing agro-industrial renaissance. But so we'll go on from there. Coming out of this great project is what you call the Erie School of Engineering. Benjamin Wright was a surveyor. He wasn't an engineer. John Bloomfield Jervis started as he was pulling trees in 1817. He was pulling trees down and laying out the path for the canal. And he ended up by 1824, 25, he ended up being the chief engineer for an entire section of the canal. They built the canal in sections. They took the first section, I think it was from Rome to Utica. It was very, very flat. So they decided, we'll take this first section and we'll complete it because it's going to be the easiest. But once we do it, once we get it going, then it's going to be a fait accompli that this canal is going to get built. And then we'll move on to the tougher parts of the canal. But we are going to build this whole canal. Canvas White, he went to England and actually came back with a kind of cement that you could use underwater. So they would use this cement under the, in the canal underwater. And Canvas White, for example, Benjamin Wright, Canvas White, they went on to build one canal after the next after this project was done. The Delaware and Hudson Canal, other canals. John Bloomfield Jervis went on to work at the Delaware and Hudson Canal. I think he was the chief engineer of the Delaware and Hudson Canal. He then went on to build railroads. And so this Erie School of Engineering, and later partnered with the, as we'll get into a little bit, partnered with the Army Corps of Engineers, became the engineering capability for the entire development of the nation. So just to give you a sense of it, the Erie Canal is 363 miles long. It goes from Albany, New York to Buffalo, New York. You can see here that where it starts in Albany and how it goes up and up and up. And you can see also the map there of the line of the canal. And there was a proposal at one point to go into Lake Ontario, but it was decided that no, they're going to build the canal completely inside land, right? 363 miles of landlocked canal. And that's an excellent idea that they did that. That's very important. What's the point of going to Lake Ontario? It's easier. You want to develop. This is what Lyndon LaRouche would call a infrastructure corridor, a development corridor. You're developing the interior of the nation. And I just want to point out that this is what the British Empire never wanted to do. In fact, anything that they could do to stop other nations from developing the interior of their nations, they would do, because they just wanted to have ports and choke points and control trade. They didn't want to develop. You had people in England like Brindley and these guys who did want to develop England to be an agro-industrial power, but the empire had no use for such ideas. 18 aqueducts. And this, you can see the engineering feats that these were. Aqueducts, obviously, these are where the canal goes over the river. So you're actually lifting up the water, and you can see you're lifting up the path of the water over other bodies of water. So there's the aqueduct in Rochester, the aqueduct in different towns along the way. 18 aqueducts in total were built. Lockport. This was an engineering feat. Steps of 5 locks in Lockport, and you can see those 5 locks. And you can, if you go to Lockport today, they've changed it so that now, it's still functioning. And I believe there's 2 locks now. They're much taller, but you can see along the sides of the wall where the old locks were. So towards the end of the completion of this canal, General Lafayette came and did a tour of the United States. He went to all 24 states, and he actually in 1824, he arrives in 1824. He goes to Washington, D.C., and he basically Philadelphia, D.C. He stays in D.C. through the election, and he makes sure that he's there to help push through the election of John Quincy Adams. And that's very, very important that John Quincy Adams was elected, because you had Monroe. You had Monroe for 8 years. Monroe oversaw the development of the Second National Bank. He was committed to the idea of internal improvements. There was still a lot of pressure on him from the Southerners to say, well, there's got to be a constitutional amendment in order to do this. But more and more, like in his 7th inaugural address, Monroe really makes the point: we need internal improvements. We need a government which is developing the nation. Nobody else is going to do it but the federal government. So Lafayette, who's steeped in this thinking, and of course, was critical in the securing of the American victory, he comes and he helps to get John Quincy Adams elected. And under John Quincy Adams's presidency, there's a complete unleashing of the federal government to promote science, internal improvements, the unleashing of the Biddle Bank to finance these things, to secure the credit for these great projects, and they have the Erie Canal as a proof of principle that this can work. So the Thomas Jeffersons can go shut up in their little, their on their little plantations. This can work. We're going to develop this nation. All 24 states, and then some in the future, are going to develop. So this is a famous picture. This is the October 26th, 1825. The canal is complete. This is DeWitt Clinton, who's no longer governor, I believe. He's defeated. He's no longer even on the Canal Commission. He is thrown out by the Van Buren, the Van Buren party. And Van Buren, it's interesting. Van Buren had attacked the whole idea of the Erie Canal. Van Buren later will be a complete scoundrel as president, as the mentor of Andrew Jackson, the controller of Andrew Jackson. He's the vice president, and then he becomes the president, and he oversees the destruction of the Second National Bank with Andrew Jackson. He oversees the destruction of the there's in 1824, when the last year of Monroe and the coming administration of John Quincy Adams, you have the General Survey Act passed in 1824, and this is where the Monroe basically says he unleashes the Army Corps of Engineers, do a general survey of the nation, look at where we can have internal improvements. Don't think about any one state. Think about the nation as a whole. All kinds of internal improvements, do a general survey. And Van Buren overturns the General Survey Act. So what a pig this guy is. So he basically, DeWitt Clinton is stripped out of this entire thing, but he's, of course, the father of the canal. This is him taking water from Lake Erie and dumping it into the Hudson River. As he had prophetically said, when the canal started, within 10 years, we will have water mingling from Lake Erie to the Hudson River. So to give you a sense of how people thought about this canal, the following words are engraved on a capstone for the Buffalo Locks system. Erie Canal, let posterity be excited to perpetuate our free institutions and to make still greater efforts than our ancestors to promote public prosperity by the recollection that these works of internal improvement were achieved by the spirit perseverance of Republican free men. Well put. So what did the Erie Canal do? Whole new cities, like I said, development corridors, whole new industries. Now think about the cities. Albany, Schenectady, Utica, Rome, Syracuse, Rochester, Buffalo, and a whole bunch of little towns in between that each had some industry to offer some product to offer the nation. And this is what the Erie Canal allowed. Then it also opened up the Great Lakes. So the whole Great Lakes opened up, and the potential to create new states, new infrastructure, etc. In the first year, 1825, they had almost $500,000 back to the state of New York in tolls, and over $1 million per year thereafter. So it paid for itself relatively quickly. I think the canal ended up, the first iteration of the canal ended up costing, if I'm not mistaken, about $6 million. It did go over, but it paid for itself. It paid for itself many times over, and even that is the wrong way to look at it. Kind of like when they say the space program, you got back $10 for every dollar you invested. Yeah, but it's not that simple. That's a monetarist view, right? It developed the nation. That's what it did. So even if it didn't pay for itself, it developed the nation. The what you got back in taxes from the growth of population, from the building of new industry and new cities, that was the investment. So I'll just make the point that you had West Point Engineering that took off as a result of this. This is on the Hudson. West Point is on the Hudson River, and the Army Corps of Engineers became a very, very proud institution in the United States, and maintains and builds still to this day a lot of the infrastructure in the United States. And it's a good use of our military. Instead of going off to one damned war after the next, let's build our nation. So you can see here the development. You have the Erie Canal up top, a whole bunch of other canals, the Champlain Canal, the Chemung Canal, which are not pictured here, but they come off of the Erie Canal. But so you can see the development into Lake Erie, and a whole bunch of other canals that then come into existence through Ohio, through Indiana, through Illinois, and we connect to the Mississippi River. And I'm trying to think, there was a class I think there was a discussion with Tony Chaikin. We had this discussion where I forget who it was, but there was this beautiful idea that the Mississippi River Valley would be home to 500 million people, which we haven't even gotten to 500 million in the United States yet. This was in the 1850s, 60s, where this person, this patriot, who I can't think of who it was, but anyway, this idea of the Mississippi River Valley becoming the home to 500 million people. So what you've done here with this Erie Canal and then the subsequent canals is opened up this entire area to the Mississippi River for commerce, development, industry, agriculture, etc. And I'll just point out that Abraham Lincoln from Illinois, who is a state representative for 4 terms, for 8 years, he is an absolute champion of this American system of political economy. As he says, my politics are short and sweet, like the old ladies dance. I'm for a national bank, a system of internal improvements, and a high protective tariff. There's a lot of talk about tariffs these days. Tariffs are great if you have industry to protect. We don't even have industry to protect. But the most important thing in the American system are the other two, which we have neglected completely: national banking and a credit system, and internal improvements. We got to focus on that. Then we can get some industry back in this country. So just to see, how this develops, map of rail and canals in 1840 and 50 and 60 and 70, it just takes off across the country. Of course, Lincoln is he creates the Transcontinental Railroad during the Civil War, which is finished after his untimely death. It's finished under Grant, but you can see the development that takes off here, overseen largely by the Army Corps. So that's where I wanted to stop. And there's a lot to discuss here from 1840 on in another class in terms of this idea of the development of the interior of the nation. But suffice it to say, the British hated this. They absolutely hated it. They wanted to destroy it. They used their agents in the United States again and again to shut down national banking, to destroy the greenbacks, which was the third sovereign currency, national currency of the United States. And they did everything in their power to sabotage anybody that was involved in doing that in the United States. And we have to get back to that American thinking right now. It's insane that we're involved in all of these wars, and we were promised that we would get out of these forever wars, and now we're right back into war again, and it is a disaster. And we should do what people voted for in this last election, which we should engage in building great projects again in our nation, building some new cities. We haven't built a new city in God knows how long. Maybe Las Vegas is the last new city we built. I don't know. And that's a gambling casino. So, the last great infrastructure project that we built in the United States was under Eisenhower with the St. Lawrence Seaway and the interstate system. But we have a lot to do. We should get back to work again with NWAPA and things, North American Water and Power Alliance, great projects of development again. So that's what I wanted to present. And
great. Thank you. I think there was actually something more recent, which is the storm surge barrier, the Lake Pontchartrain area in New Orleans in the wake of Katrina.
Oh, good. Okay.
Which they were very quiet about, but it shows that you can do it. And of course, the one they did not do, which was the one that I have been championing for some time, is the Outer Harbor Gateway, which would be a 5-mile barrier from Sandy Hook, New Jersey to the Rockaways. And you'd also put another sea gate by Throgs Neck. But this point about transportation, I think, is key. I think in China, isn't it Chinese? They say if you want to end poverty, build a road.
Right.
Build a canal, because
right.
You're creating trade and you're increasing the consumption of products which are necessary to the improvement in the standard of living.
Right.
And to that end, I just want to really, really promote our new pamphlet just in time for the 4th of July. I hope people can see it. You can order them from the LaRouche Organization. We'll ship them out to you to get out. It's a suggested donation of $20 each, and you can also hand them out and get donations. But it talks about Lynn's economic method, and you can see, I hope you can see this. Can you see this?
Yeah.
The transcontinental railroad system, which we are proposing, which is about 42 to 43 kilometers of new modern high-speed rail. China, maglev was invented in New York, of course, at Brookhaven, as a spin-off of the space program. But really the two scientists or engineers who came up with it, I love this story. One of them had a girlfriend in Massachusetts, and he hated getting stuck on the Cross Bronx every time he went to see her.
We all.
So he said, there must be another way. And he came up with maglev, and we never bothered to build it. And the Japanese came and said, you're not building it. Would you like to sell us the patent? So they sold the patent to the Japanese. They built it. And that's why the former late Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, when President Trump got elected the first time, came to the United States, I think even before Trump was sworn in, and offered. He said, how would you like to get from New York to DC in an hour? They've been trying to allow us to benefit from the technology that we ourselves invented. But so far, we haven't had a government that's been willing to take them up on the offer.
We lack vision right now. We've got to get it back. We really have to get it back. I mean, one thing, I was thinking about what you said in terms of the development of the nation. You actually change time when you build this infrastructure. You change the time it takes to get across the country, right? What would take 6 days now takes 1 day. Now takes 4 hours. 5 hours. You're increasing the wealth of the nation as a whole, and you're allowing the nation to produce its own goods as opposed to having to buy those goods dearly from the British. You're allowing the nation to develop itself. So you're gonna bring up the standard of living of the nation as a whole, and that's what we have to do. That's the mission. We've got to, if the American citizenry really wants to celebrate the 250th anniversary of our country, they've got to learn what the actual history is, what actually built our nation. It wasn't British free trade. It was American system development of the nation. And so I think, hopefully we can educate a lot of Americans in the coming weeks and months ahead during this. People will be thinking about it because we're now, as of today, as of July 4th, we are now in the 250th year of our nation's founding.
Exactly. And since it's Friday and people have Saturday and Sunday, then I would strongly recommend taking some time over the weekend to read some of the documents of our founding fathers, particularly John Quincy Adams. People are talking about his 1821 July 4th address to the Congress when he was Secretary of State. He wasn't president at the time, although he was becoming, I guess he was going to become the president. And then he later was in the Congress, so he did quite a service for the nation. The works of Alexander Hamilton, and I will just say very emphatically, the work of the greatest American genius so far, Lyndon LaRouche, who had a better understanding of the Constitution and the principles under which and the reason for our nation's founding than anybody I know. And I think people should take some time, and I will tell you Sunday morning at 10 a.m., there will be one of LaRouche's really wonderful speeches on this question, actually, of defeating the British Empire. So tune into that, and please organize and be thoughtful. Anything else you want to add, Chris?
No, I was just thinking, if you go back and you look at that whole period from George Washington to Monroe to John Quincy Adams, Hamilton, these were the people that founded our nation. These were the people that risked their life and limb for the nation. They gave everything to the creation of this nation. And that's what they were interested in. That's what they were involved with, was the creation of an American credit system to build internal improvements and develop the country. So if you want to actually think like the founding fathers, and people will give all kinds of lip service to Benjamin Franklin, to George Washington. Oh, yeah, I love them. Yeah, they're great. You don't know anything about them. Admit it. You don't know anything about them. You don't know what they did. You don't know what they fought for. And, just admit it. and then dive in and find out what they did and how they thought, because it's different than what you think.
Exactly.
And
I have to say, it gets to plug the pamphlet some more. The Economic Recovery Plan of 2025 in the spirit of 1776, and I put in parentheses, the American system isn't what your neighbor thinks it is.
exactly. So you better be smart enough to educate him.
Exactly. All right. Well, thank you so much. I don't want to keep everyone. They're all running out to see fireworks. Go watch the fireworks and then become a firework in front of your congressman's office. I shouldn't say that literally, but we need to take some friendly pitchforks to the rear ends of the Congress and get this program done. I think Americans don't want war, but do you know the alternative? Do you have a vision of the future? Can you get your congressman to act like a congressman and not a salesman for Raytheon, BlackRock, British Aerospace like Kirsten Gillibrand? The Congress largely acts like they are representatives of these big corporations, and they have to represent the principle of the general welfare, the needs of the American people, and you do have the power to hold them to it. So please use it.